behind the blue curtain. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Its Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Liberation of Undermine. Before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast?
Listen, on this podcast, man, we're talking about games. This is a very classic episode archetype from us. We have just finished. We got AOTC last Thursday. For the Liberation of Undermine, we killed heroic Gallywix for ahead of the curve. And traditionally, once we do that, we sit down and sort of take a look back at at the raid, and we give our 2 cents. Okay, we chime in, we take a look. What do we think? Good, bad, ugly? Who knows? I guess we've been doing this since Shadowlands. We never did BFA, right? Because I think that was
I came
joined during Shadowlands.
Yeah. Did we do? Yeah, no, I rejoined during Shadowlands because I had rejoined at the end of what was one before?
Maybe.
What was one before Shadowlands? No, what was one before BFA?
Legion. But we didn't do any during Legion.
No.
We were podcasting then, but
yeah. No, I did the beginning of Legion, I think. Maybe, and then I came back at the end and I did everything, and I had burned myself out on WoW before the expansion I had ostensibly come back for had even launched. And so I played BFA for about a week, and then I did other things with my life.
It's like the most relatable feeling I've ever heard in my life. Okay. So, yeah, let's talk about Liberation of Undermine. So, Undermine launched, I guess, 4 months ago in February of this year. It launched as the smallest boss raid in recent memory. So it is 8 bosses, which is very, very short compared to some of the, kind of marathon raids that we've had in recent memory. 13 in the Sepulchre of the first ones. Gallywix was the final boss, sort of the final villain, the trade prince Gallywix. And I don't know. I guess we just ought to get in it. Hold on, let me drink.
Yeah, what are your... Go on, sorry.
Do you have like an overall? Do you want to start with overall or end kind of like with an overall?
Let's switch it up. Let's end with overall.
Okay.
I guess spoilers for Liberation of Undermine, if you care, or if I don't think there are any story beats in the raid. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's story mode, so it's your fault. Yeah, I don't care anymore. All right, let's go. So let's start with Vixie. What's her name? Vexy and the Gear Grinders.
Vexy and the Gear Grinders. Okay.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a little bit of an overview of this fight. There's Vexy. She's on souped up trike, I assume. I actually don't know if it's a trike. It's got like a cattle clearer on the front of it. It zooms around. The big mechanic is ads will spawn on their own racers, and they will race at you. You kill them. You hop in their trikes, and then you get somebody who isn't doing good DPS to throw the trike at the boss. And
I used to do these all the time, but then I stopped. At a certain point during the raid is the story of how Buddy goes from doing all of the mechanics to none of them. I never do fucking mechanics.
No, I know what you mean.
Take care of it.
Yeah, I mean it's not. I'm not quite that bad, but I am kind of like, but very soon I was like, I'm giving up too much DPS to hop in this thing and launch it at the guy. So my efforts have been otherwise. But once you launch enough trikes at the at Vexy, her armor plates fall off, and she calls out a bunch of robots.
Big burn phase.
Yeah, big burn phase, and then you kill her. And then a neat little thing is that when you kill the big trike, she pops out, and she's relatively trivial to kill, but you do have to kill Vexy separately from the thing. There's also like oil puddles that you have to burn off and stuff like that. What did you think about this fight?
We've talked in the past. First bosses have to be easy and straightforward. No one ever wants to wipe on the first boss of a raid, right? If you wipe on the first boss of a raid, it's like, what are we fucking doing here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we've talked in kind of the past about what makes for sort of like a good first boss encounter versus what makes a bad one. For instance, my S tier, I actually really kind of do want to do tier lists for these just because we've done them for so long. My S tier first boss will always be the Terragru from Sanctum of
Domination.
Yeah, Sanctum of Domination. Yeah. Just because like the anima powers are so sweet. It's just like such a super fun thing to do as the first boss of your raid. I also think that there are a couple of other first bosses who, I don't know, what are some other first bosses that I liked? Who was the first boss in the lasers were neat in Dragonflight. I think I like that first boss the best. For that first boss was kind of tough, which was sweet. And then I don't know. Did I like the first boss? What was the raid before this one? Ansarek?
Yeah, that was the first boss of Ansarek. It was
the beetle. You feed him the beetle.
Yo, yeah, it was the Munchie beetle. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Vexy is a lot like that. My core thing with Vexy is I found very Armor Dragon I claim to love and yet cannot remember its name. Yes, exactly. The core thing about Vexy that I remember thinking at the time is how just annoying I found every single mechanic in that boss fight to sort of be. The oil slick and getting things kind of positioned right or whatever. We had weird positioning at first. We sort of attached that boss in a weird way, which made me really resent it. It kind of like soured my first impression. And then eventually we got a better strategy that was just much easier to sort of like implement and deal with. And I guess I like that much more. I don't know. I guess I sort of like boss phases, certain aspects of the boss feeling kind of interesting or flavorful, but otherwise, I don't know. It's the first boss. I don't care. The one detail I like about Vexy is that when she shows up, she does that huge, drift and she kills people. I think that's the greatest shit. I want them to do that in every raid.
I would say, I will say I disagree with you on the Terragru only because I care about parsing and you can't get like a real parse out of a Terragru. I think Vexy was fine. I do think it was interesting as before she became trivial, like expressing some amount of skill in terms of like dealing with the repair ads. I thought was super fun. I will agree that I hated the oil puddles. Although I think it might be for an external reason, right? Like they didn't do enough damage to me for me to care. I'll let any of the healers in the chat chime in as to if I was annoying, but it's like the most annoying part of it is like one, you slipped across it, and two, DBM causes like step out of the oil puddle, get up.
I never cared about any of this. Maybe this is a tank thing, like the tanks needed to move or more. I didn't give a fuck about any of that stuff. You can hang in them all day and I'll never notice. It's exactly what I did. And I just took the damage and I didn't give a fuck.
The annoying part was DBM yelling at me that I was in a damage puddle, right? Like and it was also a little bit annoying to just kind of like spin around as like it slowly slid across the oil puddle. Cause they're desperately trying to not lose DPS and hit every single GCD, because that's what I care about. But I do think it was like mechanics light enough to still be to be easy, but like enough there to be fun and have a little bit of mastery expression. Unlike some of these were just kind of like ram your face down. Like I think the armor dragon was maybe a step a little too far for an opening boss because aiming the lasers was a pain in the butt. And it wasn't like I like mechanics or for fights like these, like for opening fights, I like mechanics where you can choose who's doing the mechanics. And like the fire is not chosen, but like that's it's basically non-mechanic in the first place. But like launching the trikes is you choose who does that, and so you don't have to worry about someone screwing it up. Whereas the lasers,
it is also just like cute enough on its own that like you can't be mad about it. You know? Yeah.
All right.
It's like B tier, I guess, if I am actually putting bosses on tiers.
I don't know.
You'd like a tier list.
I feel like I feel like your opening boss is kind of in like you have to like rate them against other opening bosses, right? Like I feel like you've got opening boss, you've got like first half boss, you've got back half boss, and you've got final boss. Those are like the four kind of areas of raid, areas of raid boss. Just because, like, how are you gonna compare Vexy to, like, I don't know, like Anduin or
Sure. Yeah, I guess I get that. I probably agree to one extent or another. Um, yeah, was there any gear on Vexy? Did you use any of like the Vexy trinkets or anything like that?
I used the keys for a little while, but that was just more like I got this and this is what I have until I can like get the thing I want, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, no, I because to ever since vaults, like gear to me has been entirely divorced from the actual boss that drops it. Because,
Really?
well, for 9 times out of 10, I'm getting it out of the vault, right? Like,
Okay, I guess so. Yeah.
getting a piece out of the vault and like using a charge to to transform it into my class set piece. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I guess we got to talk about that, but we can hit on some of that stuff at
yeah.
the end, maybe. So the next one that we went for was Cauldron of Carnage. So this is the monkey versus the mechanical dinosaur, which was
Yeah, real quick, just as kind of a meta point, right? Because technically, the next 4 bosses you can do in any order that you want
yeah.
outside. Um, how do you feel about that? And just kind of like how do you feel about like this is the first time I think like the zone as is basically just is the raid, right? Like you obviously they stripped the NPCs out.
I like it, I guess. Frankly don't care about the zone being the like boss area because there was nothing really to sort of engage with.
Sure.
Like so for
Yeah.
instance, the opposite version of this would be something like man, this is really going back. Firelands. So in the Firelands raid, the first open section, you just walk out into the with like the Firelands stuff that you've been doing, these like Molten Front dailies or whatever else, and you have to kill a certain amount of trash in order to spawn the Huntsman, and then he's patting around, and you pick him up, and you can go to the different bosses and the different boss areas. Is kind of like that to me is sort of like a good raid zone design, I would maybe say, right? If you want to go for this sort of, if you want to like go for this sort of thing, I never felt that way about any of this stuff, and I frankly just kind of felt like it was a I don't know, it just was not all that different than any of the other ways that we normally do raid zones. So there wasn't all that much difference to me between this and like Ansarek, I guess, or Nerubar Palace, right?
That makes sense. Lou in the chat points out that Vexy can also be skipped. Although I will say that I think like by intention, Vexy's supposed to be first. The other 4 is supposed to be in any order. But
Yeah.
that is definitely a valid point. How do you feel about like bosses in any order versus a strict ordering?
I do think I like bosses in any order. I think I probably would prefer bosses in any order in a way that they are all more or less like equivalently difficult. I actually like the way that you framed it, saying that there's first boss, last boss, and then front half, back half. I actually totally get this, right? I think what tends to happen is you prog for the first couple of like 2 or 3 weeks is like progging like the first half of the raid. Basically, you kill the first boss the first day. You probably fuck up on the second boss. Maybe you down it, and you just start getting reps in on everything else. But by like the end of like week 2 or 3, you are crushing. You're going deep, right? Which is like a good cadence in my mind. And I think about bosses like Sludge Fist is a good example of this. There are these bosses which are a significant step up from what came before. Painsmith in Sanctum of Domination was like this. Sludgefist was like this. Halandris was like this. It's just like these are the hard. Like this is where your difficulty kind of jumps, and you get to that back half side of the sort of the bosses. That was sort of what happened here, but because it's only an 8 boss raid, I felt like the back half was sort of mismanaged in terms of its difficulty. Like you had Bandit, One-Armed Bandit, Muggsy, and Gallywix, all of which were relatively difficult bosses. But then you also had bosses in the front half that felt a little bit weirdly difficult. I would really just call out Sprocket Sprocket Monger in my mind as kind of the worst of these. And so that's what felt sort of uneasy. Yeah, Lou says this thing in the chat. I think the choose your own boss adventure works best when the bosses are relatively the same difficulty, but are difficult in different ways. That lets groups pick the path that's easiest for their specific skill set. And I totally agree with this. I kind of felt like Sprocket Monger and a little bit of
Sticks.
what was Styx Bunk Junker. Yes, the Katamari boss. Those two bosses felt like a step up in difficulty from Carnage and the other one.
Yeah, Carnage and Rick Reverb.
Yeah.
I will say I think that we had some very good names for bosses in this raid.
True.
But it also felt like I did feel like they at least grouped them interestingly, right? If Rick and Cauldron of Carnage are close to each other, and then Sprocketmonger and Styx are relatively close to each other in terms of placement on the map. So at least it kind of groups them a little bit that way. But I think I agree with you that they're not quite at par. But yeah, so let's just get into it then. Cauldron of Carnage, Monkey versus T-Rex. Godzilla versus Kong. Very very
very iconic.
Yeah, appropriately out of date time reference. What do you have big thoughts about this fight? So just to give you a little bit of overview, you have to keep the bosses apart because if they're together, they get a big shield. You fight them separately. The half that does Field of Cauldron is way better than the fight itself. The fight's boring as hell. I think you can get behind that. The monkey wants you to not move, and then it gives you mechanics that make you move. And if you move too much, you get stunned for a real long time. The Godzilla throws a bomb down, and you all got to soak the bomb. But then somebody gets shot at by a laser, and you got to point the laser not at your group and not across the way and accidentally wipe out the other half. Which is fine, but they're relatively simple mechanics. Then after a while, they run at each other and they do a bunch of nonsense, and then you go and you fight them in the corner again.
I'm tempted to say that it's one of my favorite bosses in this raid, which is maybe an indication of how I feel about the raid. The thing I liked about this, I always enjoyed going to this boss for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the feel of it being kind of what it is. There's a couple of like little things that the boss does that just like feel good, that were gratifying for me on a personal, on a personal kind of level. I like the fact that they come into the center and I can cleave between the two of them because they have these huge hitboxes. I like how one of them is about not moving but encouraging movement, and the other one is sort of about packing and spreading, right? When do you need to be packed, when do you need to be spread? It's just like that's like simple, clean boss design. I'm for that in a certain sense. And I don't really know why. I don't know why I enjoyed going to Cauldron of Carnage, but Cauldron of Carnage was probably the boss I enjoyed doing the most. Yeah.
I think I disagree. I found Cauldron fairly boring. Although I don't know, we'll see what I think. What my favorite. I don't know if I have I don't know if there's a boss that stand out for me here, but I just felt like Lou said, the fight's relatively boring. There's not a lot to do there. Not a lot of mastery to express. Right? It's just about hitting your buttons good, which is fine, but.
It is also one of the things I noticed about this raid compared to other raids. We've talked about single points of failure before. This was one of the boss fights where there were a lot of single points of failure, specifically on the T-Rex side. If someone is out of position and that bomb goes in a ridiculous place, you're fucked, right? If somebody points the laser like a fucking idiot, you fuck the raid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are that's not hard. Yeah, Mechanical Factory is move laser. That's about it. Yeah, it's like that's not a hard mechanic, but it is just sort of an interesting state of affairs where there was like a weirdly frustrating single point of failure where there actually haven't been all that many single points of failure across the rest of this raid. There's one very notable one that I think we'll talk about.
We'll probably talk about next. Is what if you're thinking what I'm thinking.
Are we talking about Styx or?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Styx.
Okay.
But
Yeah. I guess you could also argue Sprocket, but I was also targeting sticks with the balls, right?
Oh
The balls
yeah,
are the most insane single point of failure. You could say that the drills were as well, maybe, but I don't actually think I would agree with that, to be honest with you. It's really sticks, which is in my mind, the single point of failure sort of boss in this
yeah.
raid.
I mean, do you have anything else to
Were
say
you gonna
about?
say something different?
No. I agree. Sticks.
Oh, okay.
Um. Do you want to say anything else about Cauldron before we move on to sticks?
No, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Oh
I like I said, I liked Cauldron for some weird reason. Maybe it was just the flavor. Maybe
yeah.
that's all it really took. But just thinking about when I was going from boss to boss to boss, many bosses I found myself going, ugh. This boss I found myself going, okay,
Yeah. No, that's fair. Actually, we should probably do Rick Reverb next since he's the
I guess that's true, yeah.
that's the way we did it in. Um, Rick Reverb.
See, this to me was the boring boss. I didn't give a fuck about this boss. I thought this boss was nothing.
I actually liked him a bit more.
Did you drain pylons? Is that why?
No. Just
Okay.
I mean, switching off to the ads I thought was fun. Bless you.
Ooh, thank you.
But like switching off the ads and killing the ads I thought was super fun. Especially early on when that was like a real thing that you had to kill them in time. So just to give an overview, the DJ, I like his flavor better than I like the Cauldron of Carnage flavor. You know, he's like
That's also fair.
he's like an EDM, well, not quite EDM. He's like a DJ of some sort, and he flies around in his little, Koopa style like flying cart, and he yells at you when he drops speakers, and he spawns ads you have to kill or else they'll kill you, and then at certain points he'll like gain energy, become immune, and then like slam the ground, send out a shockwave that you have to be standing near one of the amplification towers for, and then it'll pop you out of it, and you rinse repeat, and then you go murder him some more. I didn't think Rick Reverb was particularly challenging, but I did enjoy the vibes, and I enjoyed the ability to just kind of like mash face on him, right? Like I said, I enjoyed fighting the ads. I enjoyed the mobility aspects of popping up in the intermission phases. Apparently you thought it was boring, which makes sense to me. It is just kind of like pound hard on the boss for a while.
Yeah, I expect if I was doing the pylons appropriately, but normally I am pretty mechanics forward as a player. But I was mechanics backward on Rick Reverb specifically for the reason of my UI did not properly deal with the pylons. Everybody else could see the energy on the pylons in an easier way than I think because I had played her. And that is, like a stupid reason not to care about a boss, but I actually have a lot of stupid reasons not to care about bosses in this raid, so we're gonna keep going after this one. Okay, it doesn't get any better from here. So yeah, like that was my, Rick Reverb to me was essentially the exact same. Part of it is also that like my class is cleave focused. So as long as the ads were in range, which they weren't always, to be fair, right? My literal DPS rotation does not change. All I'm doing is adding one button so that my attacks cleave off, because this is how Fury works. Fury says when you thunderclap or whirlwind, you spread your damage around. So you're doing your single target rotation, but just adding thunderclap or whirlwind in there turns it into your AoE rotation. So it wasn't even like I really had an opportunity to like juice the ads for like extra DPS or anything like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I really all that much care about that kind of thing in the first place, but yeah.
No, makes total sense. Yeah, I'm on board with it being a relatively simple fight that doesn't have a lot going for it, but I liked it better than Cauldron. All right, I guess we can get mosey on to Stick Spunk Drunker.
Yeah, so Styx is the most interesting fight. I think Styx is probably my favorite fight in the raid. Which I feel like is like a basic bitch opinion, to be honest with you. But I also hate Styx also at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I have a very bittersweet love-hate relationship with Styx personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the thing we talk about a lot, is he's randomized, assigned, single points of failure. Lou in the chat says Katamari is undeniably fun. It is kind of fun. The issue is that it's randomly assigned to you. It's a DPS loss if you're caring about parses, which is a thing that, I care about, right? And also, if you roll into crabs, you fuck the raid, right? Like, that kind of thing. The trash crabs I didn't think were bad, but like I find that like a lot of these things can lead to like I don't know. There was I was bitching to you about this behind the scenes, but it's like, people try and like rearrange ads to make things easier, and it's like, no, I'm fighting this here. Let me fight this thing and stop pulling the fucking ad away from me. uh, 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 you should get a big burst of DPS from the trash ball to help offset, though. Huh? I actually don't know if that I didn't. Part of that I'm sure makes sense. So the trash ball itself is tracked as separate DPS in the parse, Lou.
Right.
So it's got a separate line in the parse sheet, which is why I've been making the jokes the past couple of weeks that one of our players, Houdini, has been out damaging the trash balls because he has been parsing higher than the trash balls, which is kind of insane, and props to him for that. But
yeah, I typically dislike mechanics like this, to be fair. I almost always want this is like a big thing that I argue about with people in the Mythic Plus scene, because in Mythic Plus everybody wants kiss curse mechanics where you perform some mechanic but then you get a buff for performing it, and I hate that. I think that's wrong. What I want my damage to come from the class. Essentially what I think people view is they view kind of their damage and they go, oh my god, I can get a boost, right? I view the whole thing and I divvy out which proportion is coming from me and my decision making and which proportion is coming from bullshit extra mechanics. And when there's bullshit extra mechanics, that feels cheap and unfun to me, right? But I think that's just like a me. That's like a me thing. The thing about sticks that I really hated is the very first liftoff thing. It was perfectly timed to fuck me. It was 1 minute and 45 seconds in. So basically, here's how it works. I start that fight with minute and a half cooldowns, okay? If I use my minute and a half cooldowns on cooldown, okay, I will get another round of them before Styx goes upstairs. But depending on whether or not like stuff happens, it is either correct for me to wait for his stupid little phase to play out, or it's correct for me to rip all of my cooldowns into him and then just let the last it's a 20-second cooldown. And just let the last 5 seconds of it sort of fall off. Because obviously if I hit a minute and a half cooldown at minute 0 and at minute 130, I'm only going to get 15 seconds of my 20-second buff kind of thing. And that interaction is so fucking annoying that it really downgrades this boss. I probably would really love this boss if this one mechanic was pulled from it. So if I could just rip all of my, rip all of my cooldowns. The thing that I really liked about it though was the procession. Like, I think progging this boss was the most fun I had in the raid. Part of it is that we are a particularly low DPS crew, right? Like the Wombo group is one that frequently is running up against enraged timers. And so this was sort of a boss that really pushed me. Like, I cared about parses on this boss because it really pushed me to maximize my DPS. And part of what I was doing at the same time was like maximizing the way that I was handling the crab CC and the crab, getting the crabs off of the trash pile. I felt like I got really good at that. It was a cool thing. I had a lot of skill mastery that I got to basically express as part of this. That was just very specific to Fury's rotation. And all of that stuff kind of bundled together made Styx like a very fun boss, even though there were these weird, like I said, bittersweet, there's these weird annoyances. I popped my cooldowns 100,000 times before I got picked for the ball, and I wanted to fucking kill myself. I was like, this sucks so bad. I hate this.
I there's a couple things here too. Like, I feel like there's like enough mechanics for everybody to be annoyed about something. Like for me, I was constantly frustrated when people would like roll trash balls into like crabs and like kill the pole, right? Like,
yeah.
And I've been there, right? Like getting bumped into it or like not realizing that it's a crab. Like, like somebody moved a crab as you're like veering into the boss, like, oh no, and you can't veer out of the way fast enough or whatever, right? Or you bump into somebody, and you just like bounce, and that's just annoying. On the other hand, I'm sure I pissed off a ton of people because I could never get through my head like that I was on fucking fire. I must have lit 3,000 piles of trash on fire because I just didn't register to me that like I had to like that the mechanics happening. I was like, Never paid attention
I
to
also
it.
felt like I could never see the fire, and also he sets things on fire anyway. But here's the I have like a separate bone to pick, which is not about the boss, but it is about sort of the structure of our raid. Our raid loves to do this thing. Okay, so it's a good thing. Okay, I want to preface this is a good thing, but it has an annoying kind of other end. Other raids are very pointed and judgmental, right? I have played in raids before where when the wipe happens, the raid leader goes, "What happened? Buddy, why did you do this thing? Why did you wipe the raid? You need to do this mechanic better." That feels so awful, especially when it's you, right? And especially it feels awful. Like there's two sides of it. If it's you and you fucked up, getting chastised feels terrible. But also it feels terrible watching someone, your friend, get chastised, right? And also, you know, like I understand how terrible it is to be the chastiser in a situation kind of like that. Nobody walks away from situations like that feeling fine. So we have a kind of non-judgmental policy. We have a pretty blame-free policy, but the blame-free policy creates this sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. I would maybe kind of describe it as like Hugbox passive aggression in a way, where it's at the end of a fight where we have a stupid, like where we have a dumb wipe, someone reiterates a super simple basic mechanic that we all know the fucking answer to. And if you fuck this up, and this happened to me all the time in Sticks, because I'm gonna be real with you. I ran over a lot of crabs. I blew up a lot of crabs, you know, like I was just not great at handling this ball, and I would run it into crabs sometimes. I'm sorry. And having to sit there and just listen to someone go, "Okay, you know what? If you run into the crabs blow up." And every time I wanted to just be like, "I fucking know! I know the crabs blow up and it damages the raid. I'm fucking sorry. Okay, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to manage all of my." I popped recklessness right before I got selected for the fucking ball, and I'm just sitting there thinking about how I just whiffed a huge DPS cooldown. So yeah, I wasn't paying attention. We don't have to say anything about it. We're just like, there's like, this is my love-hate relationship with Sticks. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's everybody does this. Everybody does this. And I understand. And I totally understand that maybe there are people, and there are sometimes where new people who haven't seen the bosses come into the raid or whatever. And so you have to reiterate these things because they haven't been progging with us every single week. But like, I don't know. Sometimes I just sort of wish we just shut the fuck up at the end of a pull and we didn't try. We just said, you know what? Okay, let's do another one.
Yeah.
And like, just that's it.
I think part of the problem is that like we have enough people that if you don't repeat it, they won't actually like you need to repeat it to reinforce it for them so that you have to do it every time. And it's one of those things where if you don't do it every time, then you can figure out who you're talking to by process of elimination. Like, why do we remind people of mechanics when this person screws up, right? Like, that kind of thing. Or like, you know, just like, there was definitely at least like, you know, I just kind of say things sometimes. It's like I said it, somebody said like, "I know," and I was like, "Oh, sorry," you know, just, you know, it's a long night, right? Like we're doing this for fun. My guy, we have at least one person who needs every mechanic explained to them regularly. Yeah, Lou. Yeah, someone who.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I don't know. I might see opinions about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
My mind is if somebody needs every mechanic explained to them regularly, then obviously explaining the mechanic isn't working. Like what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like,
oh man, you know. We're gonna leave this here. We're gonna go on to something else.
I know. I know. And this is. I mean, like I said, you know, we'll talk about some of this stuff at the end. But this was probably my favorite fight because I really did enjoy progging this fight, and it made me care in a way that I didn't care about some of these other bosses. There are other bosses where I got to them with such contempt in me that I just didn't. I like couldn't give a single fuck about their mechanics. I just did what I wanted, and and like Sticks at least really got me to. Mechanics. I got very good at killing crabs, and I loved sort of the mastery process of like killing crabs and doing stuff efficiently. And I think this kill was maybe my most like the one that I felt like personally best about. You know what I mean? Because we had been progging it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and just to get it, it was like, ooh, yes, that one feels great.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I think I like Sprocketmonger Rocket Stock better, but I think that's
Oh, interesting.
more of like a like because so many things are so random in sticks, like it's hard to feel better week to week. Whereas I feel like there are parts about Sprocketmonger that I could like iterate on and get better at, right? Like by the end, like do you have anything else to say about sticks?
No, we can just move on. Yeah,
yeah, I'll use this as a good segue, right? Like there are a bunch of like movement mechanics here. It's like, oh, I can like use Transcendence Transfer to like shave a couple seconds off my movement and get a couple more GCDs in. So, Sprocketmonger is a dude in a room, and he fires a bunch of bullshit at you, right? Like, what is it? It's like big lines, big waves. There's what's it called? There are like bombs that you have to set off in order, or not in order. You have to set off bombs such that they don't overlap, which is all fun. That's like an assignable mechanic, which like I've said, I prefer. There are drills, which are a pain in the ass, but I think not as big a pain in the ass people want to make them out to be. There's a thing where he launches you across the room, and you have to get to him and pound on him for a little bit. And this to me was always a thing where I could always find a little bit more to improve on, a little bit more to work with, right? You need, like, this is kind of like a philosophy. I feel like you need enough kind of variability that there's always room to improve. Like, fighting a sponge where you just stand next to them and hit them, it's like the ability to shave off percentage points of like optimization this kind of goes down and sometimes starts like hitting like your performance depends on your procs, whereas like fights with a little bit more kind of mechanics to them and like movement, that's the either necessary movement or things like that, like give you an opportunity to kind of improve your performance week to week. Whereas the kind of dark side of that is if the mechanics are too random, then you can't. Sometimes you just get screwed by the pull, if that makes sense.
That's kind of interesting. In a certain sense, I feel the opposite in a way, but it's complicated. Something I read once. I was reading Reddit threads about speedrunning. I was reading about speedrunning Super Mario. It was like I must have watched a Summoning Salt video. This is like 2 years ago. I watched this Summoning Salt videos about Super Mario or whatever, and I was like, why is this such a popular speedrunning category? Basically, like, is it just the fact that it's Mario and so many people are Nintendo kids, kind of thing? And I was just like reading these Reddit threads, and something that somebody said that I thought was pretty compelling to me was actually the random nature of the randomized nature of some of the skips that you can do. So there's a bunch of them in like any percent Super Mario speedrun. It's like, can you execute one jump so that you clip into the wall, and then you do one thing and it's just like, do you get pulled down by these hands or something like that? It's like a bunch of these weird
Yeah,
things. Basically, yeah. Or is that Super Mario 3?
The hands are 3. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, well, whatever the case may be. But basically, what the person in this Reddit thread from 2 years ago outlined, which I think is sort of compelling, is that's part of what makes it such a good category for speedrunning, is that when you have these weird random things that can like fuck your whole run, essentially, it makes the golden run that much more momentous, essentially, because you are watching, essentially, if you have 6 different things, if you have to flip heads on 6 different coin flips, the chances of that are not particularly high, but when it happens, it's hype as fuck. Sort of is the principle that we're sort of outlining, which I think is a little bit to the contrary of sort of what you're describing in a way.
I don't do speed runs, right? Like
fair, yeah. You know what? True.
I think
but you see what I'm saying. Like, I'm like, parsing and speedrunning is like theoretically kind of similar.
I get what you're saying. I think the problem, I think the difference here is that speedrunning is a thing that happens over years, right? Like, speedrunning for Super Mario Brothers is like, a 20-year-old category, right? Like, probably older than that at this point, like 30-year-old category even, right? And for that kind of longevity, you need randomness, because otherwise the game gets solved, right? Raids don't exist in that sort of time frame, right? Like, if we were doing this raid until 2046, right? Like, one, I would probably stop doing it. But like then the random events kind of like make a golden run more important. Here I am okay with having like golden possible runs every time because then it's all just my skill that I can improve. And that's the kind of thing I'm interested in over a short time frame, right? Like this is, this is kind of like it's like a fighting game thing, right? Like, it's about execution and and getting it right, but I also don't want to do it for like, a year, I want to switch up what I'm, there's a reason why we are all happy to kind of put Thursday raids aside when we get ahead of the curve, right? Like,
yeah, okay, yeah, I
that
think I
kind of thing.
do. I think I do agree with that. I had another thing, or like another thing on this that I wanted to sort of get at, but I sort of lost the plot a little bit. Oh, this is actually part of what I like about. This is why I said it's a little counterintuitive because this is actually this feeling was there in Sprocketmonger, and I felt like I liked it. I actually really hated Sprocketmonger at first, and I think I probably would have said before you kind of made me rethink about it, to be honest. I would have said it was worse than it is, but I actually think I maybe like it quite a bit because this was a fight that I optimized pretty hard. And part of that is that, outside of things like the drills, but even the drills are telegraphed. You know what I mean? Like you have a second to get out of them. I got to a point of truly sort of sublimating this whole boss fight of knowing where to stand. My feet were just kind of where they needed to, like where they needed to be outside of stupid situations. Like I just forgot to trigger my own foot bomb because I thought that this, being a part of like the foot bomb team, because it is perfectly there to spike this frustration that I just described on Junk Bunker. In Sprocketmonger, you drop these mines from the thing, and one team has to go and then the other team has to go. And it was not that I forgot that it was it's not that I forgot that it was my responsibility. It's that I thought it was the other team's turn. I didn't realize it was my turn to pick up the thing or whatever for sort of like whatever reason. But then I wouldn't do it and we would lead to a wipe and then everyone bombs. I'd be like, I know. Okay, Christ, shut up. Just pull the boss. I don't care, right? You know what I mean? But I think at the end, I think at the end there, it's probably the boss that grew on me the most because I did get really, really, really good at it. In terms of just like positioning appropriately, having heroically for this thing and not that thing, knowing how to use, like whatever part of my DPS in order to, I don't know, solve this problem or that problem. It's just like all of that stuff was happening, I guess you would say, kind of in the background.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so that ends our bottom half, right? Then we have the top half.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's more than half. It's the bottom five, and now we got the top three. So yeah, we go into the Gallywix, and we fight the one-armed bandit. Actually, like I think I fought the trash between the hotel and the Gallywix once. I think past that we always had like a skip, and even if we were doing a full clear, we would use the skip to not have to fight the trash, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
But the one-armed bandit, a slot machine, he rolls coins out. If you stand near the coins, you get a buff. But if you get hit by them, you get stunned for forever, and then they land. And then they also have like he spawns little dudes, and depending on which types of dudes you kill, you get different bad effects from him. And you're trying to push it. You have to after a certain amount of time, he like I think it's like rig the game or something like that. Essentially, he does what he wants to. The slot machine does what it wants to, and you got to kill it before it enrage. I'm going to start out by saying like I do not particularly like this boss, and it's probably solely because the spacing on getting the coin buff was so tight, and I felt like I always missed it by like a hair. Like I missed it too much, and like keeping uptime on that buff was the biggest pain in the ass, and I hated it.
This is exactly the kind of thing I was describing before of like, I want my damage to come from me, not to come from the like weird bullshit encounter, right? I totally agree. I also thought that's fucking sucked. I also hated a lot of other things about this boss. This is probably my least favorite boss in the raid, all things considered. I the thing I wanted on this boss, which is maybe, I don't even know, it's like almost even like kind of controversial. I think we just should have pushed more. Like this was the big innovation that we kind of made at a certain point, and I was getting so frustrated in the progging because we just kind of kept wiping, and I was like, man, I really think if we just pushed, if we just like tunneled the boss a little bit, we would not have to do this next round of bomb ads or whatever. And that ended up being true. And it's like, but like there was just like so many things about this boss that I found frustrating. I hated going to the things. At a certain point, I just tuned it out entirely. I didn't kill the ads at all. I just tunneled the boss the whole time. And I didn't pay attention to any of the raid calls. I tried to get my coin buff as much as I could, whatever, as much as reasonably. I ripped my defensives and I took care of my own health and stuff like that. Like I intuited when damage was sort of high, when he's doing fire on everybody or whatever. It's like, okay, well, I'll pop Enrage Regeneration or Spell Reflect or kind of like whatever it is. But I just kind of felt like I just stopped. I couldn't care about any of the other pieces of the boss, and all I wanted to do was like single target. I just single targeted the boss out, and it was deeply boring, and I didn't give a fuck. like.
Yeah, no, I'm basically with you on this. Lou says she loves this fight. I'm curious to hear why.
It might be like a ranged. It might be a range thing. Like range can. Part of it is that like the ads are also poorly spaced for melee, right? You had ads in a couple of different spots, and it's not like they were just right next to the boss. You had to like go to them and all this stuff, which is why I just stopped. And I stopped caring, and I just tunneled the boss, especially because not putting damage on the boss was kind of fucking us, right? And I realized, I was like, you know what? My damage on those ads, yeah, sure, it'll kill them sooner, right? But like what we really need to do is push the boss before the worst things. So tunneling the boss, I think, ended up sort of being the right decision, which is kind of bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that also depends on just kind of like how mobile your character is, right? Like I feel like never felt like I had a huge problem with that, but I'm a monk, right? Like I've got like 72 different, movement abilities. The chat loose is like an attack all 4 mobs at once, easy peasy. Then the mini game of rolling coins back at it is its own kind of fun, something melee don't get to do. That's fair. It's all mechanics.
That makes sense to me.
They're all fairly easily managed, and that feels good. That I see that from a range perspective. Part of it is like, we've got to dump these pools somewhere, and half the time there's like an ad on top of it, and so it's like, well, I guess I either got to eat damage or got to rely on the range to do it, right?
Yeah, and then like when the ads pop out, the bomb ads pop out, when you're ranged, you never have to come off the boss to deal with them or kite your bomb that is fixating you off the boss, and you're just sitting there with your thumb up the butt. And it's like, yeah, like all of that stuff really sucks. So I do think maybe the reason I dislike this boss so much is just melee unfriendliness.
It's the tank's fault. Our tanks never put the pulse where they should go. Maybe it's our tank's fault, right? Like, that's the story of this raid. It's like the tanks, everything's the tank's fault.
Yeah, I'm willing to go for that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
The one thing I will mention in here is that there was interesting loot for the first time. House of Cards comes up. Was House of Cards a big one for you?
It's supposed to be, but it never parses better than my Funhouse mirror, and so I never use it.
Well, that's no Gallywix sucks. Yeah, I mean, we'll get there. Okay. Yeah, I also had Best in Slots, which is the like special mace or whatever that dropped. I liked a lot of the special mechanics that they had for items and stuff like that. I thought that stuff was pretty great, pretty compelling. But it's
So something I do want to mention about this is I think the combinations of the slot machines is a cool idea. Like I like that as a thought, but the problem is it's effectively solved, and it is a hard thing to do to design a boss where you have these kind of optional mechanics where like there's actually dynamic thinking to be done about which coin combination you're going to use. But like it always kind of seems to be solved when it happens, and so it's like, oh, just do it in this order. It's like, okay, fine. But I like the idea of having to on the fly make a call about which coin combination to use for like different sort of thing, or like which mechanic to call for different sort of things. But it always just seems to, whenever we do one of these bosses, it's always like, well, we're gonna do it in this order because this is the easiest way to do it, kind of thing. But I think that's a hard thing to avoid.
Yeah, I like mechanics like this. I've previously praised mechanics like this on the cast. But I think I don't know. This one in particular, I
Yeah.
found to be particularly just like aggravating. I also think some of it might be mechanics. One of the things that happens to me is target switching loses me a bunch of DPS. Basically, the number of times I rampage a single target gives me like a stacking haste buff, and if I rampage a new target, I lose that haste buff.
Mm.
Some of this uh some of this stuff, I would say, kind of triggers like on in normal ways. Carnage, I have to swap bosses. Okay, cool. Totally makes sense. What I want to do on bosses like this though is I want to like single target one guy and then tab over and rampage the boss. And then I single target and then I rampage. And then I single
And then
target and I
perform
rampage. And like that is like a really annoying sort
pattern.
of like pattern to go for.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to Muggsy, I guess.
Muggsy I quite liked, but I don't progging this boss I felt was a gigantic pain. I think I like this boss in theory more than I like it in practice.
I think I can get on board with that. It's got some of the like random assignment stuff that annoys me. But just to give a quick overview, Muggsy is a two-headed ogre. He does a bunch of gangster movie references. He's kind of like Two-Face. His arena's split into two halves. I think it's supposed to be like which head is Muggsy is controlling the fight at that particular point in time. On the one half, you spawn little enclosures with rock elementals with pimp hats on them that you have to kill that then blast you out. And then he shoots ice at you, and you have to use the walls to block it. And then on the other when you transfer over, he drops a bunch of nonsense. And if you leave him on one side for too often, he auto wipes the raid. On the other side, he spawns some ads and then launch it, and like a big rocket comes down that you have to group soak. Am I forgetting? Oh, and then the big annoying thing are these like one of the ads are these little mines. When you bump into them, they pop and they launch things that have to be soaked by individuals, or else you wipe the raid. Yeah, that's basically. And then once you get to a certain health threshold, he just kind of does his own thing. He charges 3 times and spins in a circle and shoots a bunch, and then he kind of remixes the stuff.
And yeah, he just does all of his mechanics all at once, and it becomes very hectic. This is part of what I like about the boss fight. I like boss fights that kind of ramp in intensity in this way.
Yeah.
And I think that part was fun. I guess
Yeah.
that part was fun. But the progging part that I really hated about Muggsy was I just kind of felt like maybe it was like the health thresholds or something were just like just like a hair wrong. Losing to the final group of the mines being put out and then everybody just fucking trips over themselves to hit them was just like, oh, kill me. I want to go away.
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah. And there's just like a lot of that kind of little stuff to the way that Bugsy works.
Yeah, there's also this aspect where like, because it's health threshold, if you like triggered him at the wrong point, you'd be put in an awkward situation where it's like, oh, half this mechanic got done, and you still have to finish that half of the mechanic while he's doing his like charge and spin thing. You probably could have fixed that with like a 10-second transfer kind of animation or something, right? They've done this before where it's like, oh, I'm transitioning over here, so I'm gonna like spin in a circle and like do an animation, and during that time you clean up all the nonsense that you got to clean up before the next phase hits. But you don't get that. He starts charging and spinning, and if you've got a spare fucking bomb out, fucking good luck, deal with it, you motherfucker, right? Like, and that killed us a couple of times when we were like in kind of the mid prog where we weren't good enough to push him before our mechanic went, but like we were actively having to hold off on pushing him to like let a mechanic resolve so we didn't fuck ourselves during the transition phase. It was just annoying. I think ideally you never hit one of those kind of situations.
Yeah, those kinds of things I find to be just like deeply aggravating, and I don't know. It sort of is what it is. I think that this was sort of like defeat snatched from the jaws of victory in a way. I probably would say I would really love this boss if I could just like, spend 3 weeks with a designer tweaking it to my particular kind of like liking. Do
I know
you know what I
exactly
mean?
what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, like if we could have, I think actually quite a lot of this is like the unorthodox nature of Wombo as like a raid team. Like I bet for other raid teams this is a perfectly reasonable mechanic, but like Wombo is doing a different thing that other raid teams do. We have a couple of giga performers and a couple of very low performers, and the combination of those two things I think makes for very uneven sort of experiences. Sometimes it's the sort of thing where it feels like we can oscillate wildly in terms of DPS, like going into certain phases, because like I don't know, it's just like certain people got taken off the boss for this reason or that reason, having to go run the ice. If it's me and Dave having to go run, if it's you and Dave having to go run the ice, that is so much different than if it is two other people at the raid, right?
Yeah.
To the people who are parsing below the tanks, and things like that just like really stack up in Muggsy. There's a bunch of different mechanics that all work that way.
Yeah. And part of it too, I think, is because of that nature of the way that we raid. It's like most of the time we can just kind of like let things, like, oh, just go for it and it'll be fine, because if you've got at least one good performer in each like kind of critical spot, it gets done. But like last night there was a moment where we there was like a walls moment in like the last phase. I dutifully got called with it, dutifully stood next to Muggsy. 0 people jumped in the ring with me, and I immediately died, right? Like, and I think part of that is because, like, I think in like a more normally distributed raid, you'd be like, okay, exempting the people who get picked, evens go to this side, odds go to this side, and you set that. Because we can just kind of be like, just do it, and we assume that like one of the good guys will be in each thing, and then they'll deal with it. That's fine and it works. But
Yep.
it occasionally leads to failure modes like that.
Yeah, it definitely does. But I will say that I really liked the back and forth. I also just thought like the gangster shaman flair was cool. I was a big fan of all of that kind of stuff. So that, I guess.
Yeah. The quotable that comes out of this one, I'm surprised more people didn't pick up on. Like this is like the mortal piss equivalent. Is he says like eat molten fists, but it sounds like eat molten fish to me. So that's the thing that pops to my head every time we fight him, which is also like
I always think of have at it, mug, or then it says the other thing, be my guest, Z, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're trading off, I guess, control of their body. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's also there's also the Scarface for everything. Say hello to my tiny pal, right? Like
yeah. Which I guess brings us to Gallywix,
the man himself.
the man himself. Maybe the worst end boss ever. I don't know if it's better or worse than Sylvanas.
I think he's better than Sylvanas, because
oh really? Okay.
Sylvanas was infuriating because it was like 10 minutes of a fight you could do and you knew well, and like if you didn't pay attention enough, you'd screw it up, and then you have like 30 seconds to figure out how to actually prog on the thing you wanted to prog on, and if you screwed that up, it's like, okay, well, good luck, right? Like, so whereas Gallywix, kind of thankfully, although I do agree that he's like a pain in the ass, right? Like, the hardest phase, I think, is the first phase, right? Like, and everything else is just about attrition past that, right? Like, if you can get past that first phase, it's actually a relatively smooth path past that, which is kind of frustrating in the moment, but in terms of, like, actually getting prog done, I think is actually much preferable. I'd rather spend more time in the first phase. Once you get past it, it's kind of okay, than having to, like, endlessly go through the first phase easily and have to hit the end phase be tough.
You know, that is maybe fair. I don't know. The thing I liked about Sylvanas was a fight I truly progged. It was a fight where I got better at really tiny individual sort of micro optimizations, especially in that kind of like middle phase. I knew how to time things so perfectly so that I was blade storming here and doing whatever there. It's like all that kind of stuff. I never felt any of that with, Gallywix felt so deeply random and like nothing like none of the decisions that I personally made really mattered all of that much. This is mostly about the AOTC version of things. I did quite like the normal version. Part of that is that like I was running like sort of like running bombs and all of the rest of this stuff. But like when the ads spawned in Sylvanas, I knew exactly how to handle them and they reacted in a way that I felt like was, I don't know, it's just like you're all there, you're running along this sort of line so the ads could like go off on the distance and do all these different kinds of things, right? What happened with Gallywix is I just felt like the ads were super random and there's a bunch of them and I'm constantly having to sort of like target swap and he's moving all of the time, which is just like a giant pain in my ass for melee, or I have to get out because of a bomb, or I have to like I don't know, just like a million of these things. And the worst crime of all of them is that none of it felt cohesive to me. Basically every mechanic felt like a circle on the ground. It did not feel like a bomb going off, which is, I understand the lore, like the lore and the flavor of the fight is that he is shooting us with a bunch of different guns and weapons and everything like that. But just I didn't connect to any of that at all. And so the real chief sort of, I don't know, demerit that Gallywix has, in my opinion, is that he didn't feel like fighting really anything, um, which is unique, I guess. Not a lot of bosses have felt that way to me in the past. Almost always the end boss is very flavorful, super interesting. It introduces some cool new mechanic that I've never thought of in a way that I think is like sweet or engaging. And even if I don't particularly like the boss, fair, I have not liked a couple of the end boss sort of like here and there. I at least can kind of get into it on some other sort of level. But yeah, I don't know. That's my big hatred for Gallywix, I think.
I think I feel that. I think Gallywix just like didn't have a ton of characterization in the first place, right? Like he's a fat merchant, right? And there's not a lot I think you can do to like. He's not a particularly like engineering goblin either, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do to like make him feel like his character because he doesn't have a ton of like interesting combat as a character, right? He's kind of like a sleazeball, right? And I think the Galagio as as a thing as like the casino that kind of works in that vein, but like they didn't really like the fight didn't feel very casino to me either, right? It's just kind of like
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly what I was thinking. I thought of a number of different ways if I was the encounter designer for Gallywix, right? Like you could imagine that there is that Gallywix is going to different stations in order to upgrade his mech, and there's a thing, and he's putting coins on the ground, right? He's putting molten coins all over the, and when he goes to the station he sucks in all of his molten coins, and then that's paying the guy. And so what you need to do as the raid, soak enough coins that he is not getting enough of an upgrade that he wipes the raid. It's like I feel like you could think of 1,000 different ways to sort of like this better, but they basically just put him in a big mech and made him shoot bombs. And like I don't know, I like it was so boring in terms of just like dealing with this guy. um I also don't know that there was like a great way to really attack some of this stuff, because as much as I do think Gallywix is a neat villain, I predicted years ago in the Warcraft lore subreddit that he was going to end up becoming like the end boss of, I obviously didn't predict like the Galagio. I was like, oh yeah, he'll show up someday as an end boss, some patch zone somewhere like down the line kind of thing, which is exactly what's true. This happens to me on my Reddit account. People will, I don't know, for some reason go find that thread and be like, wow, you really called it. And it's like, yeah, I guess so. But they're just like, there wasn't really anything for me to kind of latch on to in terms of sort of like the flavor side of things. And man, even for Sylvanas, even for I think the worst boss fight, there was at least there's that, flavor. I was there. I was in it. I was with it. I totally get, she's ascending the chains of whatever and doing all this stuff, and she's shooting with her bow and all, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm a big Gallywix hater. This is maybe my least favorite raid in a really long time. I would really have to go back to find a raid I think I liked least
You
or
know,
less.
I don't hate this raid, right? Like, I think it's fine, right? Like, but I guess I do feel like, and I have to examine whether or not it's because of this raid or it's because of like the point in time, but it is the one where it's like, I don't need to do this again, right? Like, I will come around to help other people get AOTC if I can, but like, I'm not clamoring to like, I'm not interested in doing that for like parse's sake or whatever, right? I'm just happy that it's done.
A good version of this would maybe be if we were to do like a remix or something, or like classic. I don't know that I care for Undermine, Liberation of Undermine classic in the same way that I would care for sort of like other raids. But yeah, I don't really know. I would really have to go back, I think, to find a raid I enjoyed less than this one. Partially because I think Gallywix is kind of bad. I maybe do think Sylvanas is worse, just kind of like on the raw mechanics of it. But there also is no highlight. At least Sanctum of Domination had Kel'Thuzad. I loved that fight. You know what I mean? At least it had Terragru, right? Also a fight I really, really loved. Or Painsmith, an incredible fight. Painsmith is one of the best fights that they've done in the last 5 or 10 years, whatever the number is, kind of thing. It didn't feel like there were a lot of upsides to Liberation of Undermine. It kind of felt like everything was a downside.
I was everything down, but nothing's a standout hit, right? Like there's some that are like pretty good, but there's nothing that's like, oh my god, right? There's no Herodon, there's no Painsmith, like you said, there's no there's no what's the ethereal's name that we killed a couple times.
Next is Princess Kaiveza. She's coming back. Okay,
well, not actually Kaiveza. I was thinking the other one from like the Artificer, the one from Castle Nathria. Zymox, yeah.
Yeah, Artificer Zymox. I fucking love that guy. That guy is sweet.
Yeah. Right, but like, in 5 years when we think about this, what are we going to say? Like, maybe One-Armed Bandit, maybe Lock and Sprock, or maybe Sprocket Monster Lock and Stock, but that's just because of his name, right? Like, I will say, this is some of the best names of stuff we've had in a while, right? Which I'm willing to give them, but like, that's like, that's not a lot, right? Like, I don't think we're gonna come back. Like, maybe Styx because of the Katamari thing. That's the thing we're gonna remember from this raid.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's funny to me that Styx is the one, because that is the most. I think that part of my thinking about WoW stuff is it does feel as though they are reducing the friction on individual points of failure in terms of their encounter design going forward, which is maybe good. But it also is smoothing out the raids in a way that I don't know that I think is good. And I'd be really interested to kind of like, I don't know, parse that in like 2 years, right? Is this just a thing where, and I also think part of it is that the raid is short. So the raid is the shortest number of bosses that we've had in a long time. And that nature, I think, also really kind of like my enjoyment. Right. If you have more bosses, there are more opportunities for sort of painsmiths. Right. And there's also like more opportunities for bosses that I connect to, even if they're farm bosses, something like, I don't know, Haldron or whatever, that one boss, like in Sepulchre, like that's just like a tiny, I don't know. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think part of the difficulty here is that like you're like, in order, if you make it interesting boss fights, or not interesting, let's not say interesting, you make ones with like complicated mechanics that involve not doing DPS, right? You're gonna hurt people's parses, and parses is a thing that people care about. But the problem is that like your very dedicated players are gonna be the ones that like do the mechanics right. But they're also gonna be the ones that are gonna care about parses, which is kind of like a thing that's always in tension with each other. I think in an ideal world, the Blizzard's devs say, well, parses aren't a real thing, so I don't care, and so I'm going to design a fight. That like it's fun first and foremost, but I think there's like too many like the reality of like, well, people want to parse, right? That's the thing that drives people, that hurts that kind of aspect of it.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Yeah.
All right, well, I think we kind of gave our full thoughts here. We're over our hour mark. How was
Yeah,
your
sure.
past?
Let's talk about our weeks, okay?
Yeah,
Because it's been like a week and a half or something since we last
yeah,
talked.
yeah.
I'm playing Hearthstone again. This is
Uh,
the spoiler, okay?
you're
That's it. I'm playing Hearthstone. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it, I guess. I like Hearthstone. What it's good. It's because I've been very magic pilled recently. We've been playing a lot of Magic. I played Commander last Friday, which was a lot of fun. But something that sort of happened was I was talking about playing Magic Arena, which I've never done before, right? But I was like, what if I just there's some neat stuff. What if I made a brawl deck, which is sort of Arena's version of Commander, but for Kaito, right? The ninja planeswalker. What if I, I don't know, did like there are a bunch of different sort of things. And I eventually got to the point of, you know what? Let me just go like if I'm gonna play a digital card game, let's see what the OG is like. So I just logged onto Hearthstone just to see because one of the things they do is they give you decks. So they will give you pretty good decks that you get to play with for like a week or something, and then you get to choose one to keep, sort of thing. And I did it, and I just kind of got hooked. And they also the thing that really brought Hearthstone is they changed Arena to make the Arena better. And the Arena is very engaging, right? Um, in a way that I haven't been engaged by Arena in sort of a long time. Just because like I have a good sense for tempo and value and what that, like what that stuff looks like, though I did lose a fucking Arena run for the stupidest possible reason recently. And the big change that they made to the Arena, there's now 2 Arena modes. There's just the regular Arena, and then there's the Arena Underground. The regular Arena is 7 wins before 2 losses, and the Underground is 12 wins before 3 losses. So 12 wins before 3 losses was the old model for Arena. But now what you do is your very first pick is a legendary of your class, and you get additional stuff along with it. So for instance, if I were to pick an elemental, I would get some stuff with elemental synergy with it, right? If I were to pick a taunt minion, I would get some, like some taunt synergy sort of stuff. So you at least kind of get to make like your baseline, like build around card first. And that's such a fun. Oh, and the other thing is you redraft on a lot. When you lose, you draft 5 new cards and you get to pitch 5 cards. So you get to ditch your worst cards and draft into, your new best cards. And I just love that. Love all of that.
that actually sounds super neat, super compelling. I like that a lot. That's good design.
I also have so many tickets. This is the other thing, because I just haven't been doing Arena. I just have so many. Functionally, it's free to enter the Arena for me. So, yeah. I don't know if I'm going to stick with it for that long. Typically, Hearthstone has a really good meta, like right now, which is the 4-set meta, when you have last year's, or you have 3 sets from last year and then 1 set from this year, because Hearthstone ticks over and it does 4, 5, 6 set metas. The 6 set meta tends to be the worst because it's the most degenerate. You just have access to the most number of cards, and people find like the craziest combos and stuff like that. But the 4 set meta tends to be sort of the slowest and the most technical, and kind of everybody has some level of bad cards kind of in their deck. Meeting over at Big Mat, I missed the last 2 bosses. I really should. Okay. That's the TLDR.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the Hearthstone news. What have you been up to?
I've been just pounding through Expedition 33. I hit the end of Act 2, which is where the big spoiler happens. It's basically one of those things where like you're ramping up to it is like this is the thing that has been pitched as the final boss for like the whole game. But very clearly, there's a bunch of stuff you haven't done. You're still in Act 2, and you never have a game that's like 2 acts, right? Like if you just don't bother splitting if it's just going to be 2 of them. And it's like there's also things that I can't access, and it's like and then there's like the big kind of reveal of what the big spoiler is, which is fairly predictable. I wouldn't say it was like the clearest. Like I was like, there's something happening here. It's like, oh, okay, this is how it all works out, right? That kind of thing. Which is neat. It's a good game. I highly recommend it. I'm kind of like, I feel like Act 3 is more of a mop-up phase than anything else. The big kind of thing, I don't think this isn't too much of a spoiler, is that as part of beating Act 2, like, so up until this point, you're kind of capped at 9,999 damage, which is easy enough to kind of hit. And I was regularly kind of doing that. And then as part of beating Act 2, you unlock that cap. And so it's just kind of like a whole other thing of optimization, and you just kind of like whale through things, and it's super fun. So I'm having a ton of fun with it. I'm giving it big thumbs up. My next game to pick up is going to be Dune, because I hear it's very Dune-y, and I like Dune. But I haven't dipped into it yet just because I want to finish Expedition 33 before I go off on other things.
Oh yeah, I said that I was going to play Dune, but then I got into Hearthstone, I guess. I don't know.
I've told you the thing that always pops in my head. We talk about Dune 2, Dune 2 chicks at once. I don't know why, but that all like every time I hear Dune 2, that's the thing that pops into my head. But what else? Yeah. Otherwise, I've just been kind of doing. Oh, I power washed the deck again for the year, which is always satisfying. It's great to like. Don't need power washer simulator if I got a real power washer.
True.
Otherwise, we haven't been making much advancement on the television shows. We've been watching a lot of Four Weddings because it's like a great kind of like mindless show. I've talked about the game theory before, like it's fun, just like being bitchy about like one of the brides is like being a cunt, and you're just kind of like, oh no, it's like, oh great, she lost, she came in fourth, I feel satisfied, right? Like, what else? Been playing a lot of D&D.
Yeah, we've been playing Heretic Heroes. We've been doing big D&D stuff.
Yeah. Lone Breath is a fun character to play. This is a very combat light campaign, which is fine. It's kind of like it's like, oh, like
it'll get pretty combat. I mean, it depends. Part of it is that you guys haven't you have avoided combat at all costs pretty commonly.
Yeah, well, I mean, up until this point, we also haven't had like our character whose big class feature is wears an Iron Man suit, hasn't had his Iron Man suit, right? Like
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I think you could have taken the Brood Horde. You guys all left the rat room, but I think you could have taken the Brood Horde if you sort of sat and committed to it. It's tough. It's a boss. It's supposed to be a boss fight. You're dealing with plague monks kind of at the same time and stuff like that, but like he's doable. I think it would have exhausted a lot of. I don't think I have a good sense of Pathfinder 2. I'm really trying to get my head around sort of the nature of Pathfinder 2e stuff. And it is not as effortless, I would say, as 5e has been for me in terms of sort of creating challenges that I think are fair or compelling. The rest of it.
Yeah, I think part of that is like not only do you not have the system mastery, is that the only person at the table who has any sort of system mastery is me, right? So like you can't rely on the players to like kind of be able to rise to a challenge necessarily until like they've interacted with the mechanics a bit more.
Yeah, I also don't think I have done a great job of sort of like designing. I'm probably going to end up redesigning Skaven stuff that I already did because I felt like even in that fight, it wasn't working the way that I want. They're supposed to be very slippery. It's hard to kind of like pin them down, but that really didn't. And maybe it's just rolls, whatever. But that really didn't come across in the way that it was sort of like meant to. and I will maybe end up sort of like tweaking some of that stuff. But the thing that sucks about that is that, part of my goal to forecast this ahead of time. I want to show you how the rats work so that you can plan around, when they are below half health and I attack them, they can do this skitter away thing, right? But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about that stuff.
Yeah. I think part of it too is, like, part of it is that, like, they just feel like they don't have a ton of health, right? Like, maybe you should just, like, have them skitter at any point, right? Like,
yeah, maybe that is the real answer. Or I could buff their health pool, I guess, technically. I don't know.
Yeah. Although I feel like them feeling fragile makes sense. It's just like you gotta nail the slippery part, right? Like that, like, they get away. They like hide, like maybe utilize cover mechanics more, that kind of thing. Something that, like, if we're in these like filth basements, they kind of like hide underneath the water. They drip down, so they get like minor concealment, which is like like a 5-10% chance of miss. Those kinds of things, right? Like, but some of that again is just like system mastering and knowing what which buttons to press where, that kind of thing, to get it to really work. But
yeah, but we are coming up on sort of the end of it. You guys have revealed 2 paths out of the prison so far, though I don't think you're taking either one. It sounds like you found the skitter gate, and you now know about Kala, the other prison. What's the other prison? The destroyed prison that you could like, if you want, you can just book it for that kind of prison. But you guys are going to figure out what's at the beacon.
Kala Quial, right? Something like that.
Kala Quial, yes.
Yeah.
The other Rampart prison that fell during the Soulstorm. Wild stuff.
No, I mean the problem is we've got 2 characters who are very interested in, like, solving this problem, right? Like two dedicated sons of the hierarchy, right?
It is also like the biggest, clearest sort of mystery. What is this thing? What's happening there, right? You're obviously putting little pieces of it together. Like each session, it's like, I think this. I think, this kind of like next stuff. And it has kind of been building to this moment, where now you are quite close. But you have to figure out how to deal, because you guys don't know how to deal with
Deal with what?
revenants. Well, you fought revenants before, but I don't think that you figured out how they work. And that will kind of unlock sort of like the final piece. Also, you have to deal with the fact that the beam is going to kill you if you try and walk too close to it, right? You have to figure out sunblock, basically.
Yeah. What else? We played a bunch of Magic, right? Like, because not to reveal too much personal stuff, but I had my bachelor party, and we played a bunch of Magic there.
That's true. Yeah, well, I guess we haven't podcasted since then, huh?
Yeah,
because I was out last week. Yeah. Yeah, we did play a bunch of Magic. I felt sort of bad in a way about the Magic that we played. We played one night, and it was a really brutal slog of a game, and we were playing with people who were not, I want to time people. I really want to time people. I want to see the chess clock, because I think that is the biggest downside to essentially playing Magic the way that we do, like Commander, is you get people. Monik was taking these brutally long, dirtily turns, and it's because he was borrowing one of my decks. He didn't see all of the things. He actually really could have won the game with that combination. He was so far ahead by that point. But just like the lines get so complicated when playing this like blink stuff in and out sort of deck, and it's like, wait, okay, so if I blink that, I can get 3 triggers on this. All right, so and you're like doing all this sort of stuff, and it completely drags the whole thing, the whole thing down.
Absolutely. Maybe we need to be better about hammering our way out of things. I also feel bad, like my brother, who has not played Magic in a number of years, right?
Yeah.
Joined us at the table, and he understood what was happening, but I gave him a big stompy deck, right? Because that's an easy thing to pilot for a person who hasn't played in a while. And he'd get these big stompies, and he's ready to fucking like stomp on people. He'd be like, "Oh, here's like removal. Here's a thing. You actually don't get to play the game, right?" Like,
yeah. Part of this is that there's a couple pieces of this. One of them was that I felt like Mark was making some kind of wild decisions. Not that I think it was like bad play. Like I totally understand why he went for sort of plays that he kind of like did. But you do know the concept of who's the beatdown? Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah. Who's the threat? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like who has inevitability, right? So in Hearthstone, this is a pretty common thing. When you're playing a control deck, you want to have an and basically what you're doing is you're just spending all of this time kind of setting up until you can guarantee kill your opponent. Right now, there's a deck that's like that called Protoss Mage, which I've been playing that is a lot of fun. There are times when control decks need to be the beatdown. And Mark was playing his deck like a control deck when he was the beatdown. He needed to stick creatures and just swing. He needed to swing sort of hard. But I think something that happens when you get a little bit possessed by the fear of being the archenemy, right? Of, oh my God, if I swing out with my whole team, I have no blockers. They could just all swing at me next turn and I'd be dead. And it's like, yes, that's possible, but what happens is that just drives you towards the inevitability, right? If you're not closing the game out, someone else sort of will. This is how Yuriko is fundamentally a pretty aggressive deck. If inevitability ruins Yuriko because she's a bunch of like 3/2 ninjas like, and just you have to be turning things sideways. You can't worry about taking the incoming damage. You don't leave up blockers on Yuriko. You just have to push, because if you don't get them down, they are going to outscale you pretty reliably, right? It's the strategy circle sort of thing. Also, distraction makers, they talk about this all the time. I mean, they talk about it as rush, economy, and defense, but I think of it as aggro, combo, and control have the exact same like relationship, right?
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense to me. And no, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's an easy thing to do at Commander, right? Like I remember like a handful of years ago at PAX, we played a game where AC was kind of like controlling the board, and I just like wasn't swinging with things. And it's like, oh, I actually just need to like go for the throat, right? I need to stop like turtling up. I need to like, start.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I don't think people, I don't want to say this because I rely on people to play poorly in order to beat them, but one of the things, don't share this with like people we play Magic with, okay? One of the things that people don't think about is the value of killing a chump blocker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, I don't have a reason to attack because he's got a 1/1, he'll just chump block it. It's like, that's good. You're killing it. You want to do that. Kill his creatures. Swing hard. Kill the creatures. Who cares if it doesn't have trample or evasion or whatever? It doesn't have to hit life total in order for it to sort of like put you kind of ahead. But that is an unintuitive sort of concept. I think for players. I am very excited though, because we played Magic last Friday, where I was able to squeak out 2 insane wins. And well, actually the second one wasn't all that insane. That one was the zombie deck just kind of going hard. The first one was truly insane though. I like top decked twice out of sort of getting just run over by the freight train that was Joshua Gertner. Okay. But I like the idea of playing with a more, sort of more seasoned group. There's kind of this group of folks of friends of ours who are getting really into sort of like Magic, kind of like trucking sort of along. And I think that as that meta sort of develops and as people get I don't know, people get into it, and you start to learn some of these, you shake the rust off, you start to learn some fundamentals of the game and of the system. So yeah,
no, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I think that's basically everything on my side. Too much real life in the way of things and whatnot. But yeah. You have anything else you want to talk about, or do we want to wrap this up?
I guess we can wrap this up. I have like nothing else on my mind.
Yeah.
I wrote a really bad puzzle in 7th Expedition. That was pretty funny. It was funny in like a dumb way. Because I told you about the Slanlock, right?
Yeah.
We did that on the podcast.
Yeah, the columns
okay, so
with the words.
Yeah, we followed up on the Slanlock. Okay, so they walked into the next room. They fought the Tomb Guardians there. the Tomb Guardians were pretty tough. You know, there were 6 of them. But they were able to kill him. They were able to beat him up. And then there was another puzzle. Okay, this one was there were 8 murals in a row. They had different words assigned to them, and there was a lever essentially on each of the. So you have to pull the right lever to open the sarcophagus, or else a sacred Croxador, big alligator man, falls and beats you up, right? So basically it is, you have to know the right lever to pull in order to not trigger kind of like sort of, which is essentially the same thing I did sort of twice. The thing that I did, in hindsight, I feel like such a moron. The thing that I did was I made I all of the murals sort of tell a story in like order, and there's like words on each of them. And I decided that one of them would be what the people who built the tomb would have chosen as the mural that they would that would unlock the thing. And on that one, I just wrote a second word. So there were 7 murals that had 1 word and 1 mural that had 2. And the second word was like traitor or something. It's not like it was correct or open or something like that, right? And I just kind of assumed that the party would figure out that, you know what, if there was a second thing, this one is probably kind of the one. But there really was no good indication of that. And so they hemmed and hawed for maybe on which was the right one, and then they pulled the wrong lever and unleashed the Croxagore. And I told them what the right lever was, and they were all, "Oh, what the fuck, buddy? Come on!" And I think I probably agree. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna beat those charges that was sort of a bullshit puzzle. It was pretty funny in like a in a stupid way, I guess.
Yeah. Oh man. We should go back and
there's like was so mad.
There's an Angry GM puzzle where like part of the puzzle is like, having to take a chance, right? Like, and it's not explicit. There was a whole discourse about it for a little while. We should go back and talk about that at some point.
Oh, I do remember this. There was a 50-50, like there was a raw RNG component to the puzzle,
yeah.
Right? And is that fair?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This did not have a raw RNG component, but I just the real thing. Here's why this is a bad puzzle in hindsight. In hindsight, the first puzzle was not video gamey, right? It was, you had to put like the right thing, you just write the right words or whatever. And it kind of punished the players because they came to a very gamey conclusion, which was, only one of each of the pillars, and they tried all the words of the pillar and it didn't work. And I was like, oh, fucking God, Christ, all this stuff. The second puzzle was a very video gamey puzzle. The solution to that puzzle was essentially, there are 2 clues here instead of 1. That makes it notable. One of these things is not like the other. That's it. That's kind of all of it. That's not technically true, because also at the same time, I was designing from perspective. If I were the Slan, if I were these lizard men who were creating this tomb in sort of the first place, what would be the lever that I would choose to be the important one? And that lever happened to be the one where they made the deal with the person who the tomb is about, the Blood King, right? But like, that's like a sort of a secondary kind of reason. Really, the clue that I thought I was giving that was just, there happened to be 2 things on one and 1 on all of the rest, and that was enough of a sort of an indicator. And so on one end, I was sort of punishing them for thinking too video gamey about the puzzle in the Slanlock. But then the second one in the sarcophagus, it was entirely video gamey. There was really no good indication for what the right thing was outside of just the video game answer, which is, there happens to be like
the meta answer, right?
Yellow. Yeah, exactly. And so that's why it was a bad puzzle. It was pretty right. Lou says, I felt mildly bad after we dismissed for the evening because I legit yelled, but now that he brought it up again, I'm mad again. Yeah, well, listen, it is what it is. Okay, manage your resources, don't fuck up. I believe in you guys to do this dungeon. There's only like 7 more rooms or something.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up now so you can spend 2 hours figuring out some more bad puzzles to throw at your players.
Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna say, if you'd like to email us about anything you talked about in this podcast, email us at derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsgames.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/derpsgames, youtube.com/derpsgames, where these go out live. Rate and review us wherever you find podcasts. All the links down in the description. Buddy, you have anything else you're looking to promote?
Nanomon comes out next week. That's the big one.
Nanomon.
Nanomon comes out this week. Nanomon is what I'm looking to promote.
Fantastic. Well, with that, I'm going to say until next time to your listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.